Welcome to the Seattle Investors Club podcast with Julie Clark and Joe Bauer, where we share the nuts and bolts of real estate investing from our 20-plus years in the industry. Sit back, relax, listen, and immediately take action. Are you ready? Here we go.
Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Real Estate Investing podcast. My name is Joe Bauer, and I'm here with my co-host, Julie Clark. Julie, how you doing today?
Well, Joe, I am all good, but I got to tell you what, I'm a little bit tired today.
Yeah.
Because us Clark girls had a little incident last night that kept us up a little bit late. And, many of you know me well enough to know that I have beautiful and silly twin girls that are 11 years old and going to be 12 this August. And one of my girls, Katie, has been born with the Clark funny gene. She's a silly girl, super funny. And so last night she was goofing around and, they have, shoulder length hair, all one length, long, nice, beautiful locks, nice, thick hair. And she comes in and says, "Hey, Mommy, do you like my new look with my bangs?" And she had this headband on, and it really looked like somehow she'd hidden her hair, and it really looked like she cut her hair and had bangs. I actually leapt. I jumped off the couch, and I was like, "Holy crap, did you cut your hair?" And she's like, "No, I didn't do it. Ha, ha, ha." And so she hid her hair some way. Well, about 30 minutes later, she comes back where I am and she says, "Mommy, can you help me? The comb is stuck." And I'm like, oh, crap. I look at her. She's got this huge black comb stuck to her forehead with her hair totally wrapped many times around this comb. Long story short, Katie doesn't even have...
We've lost her.
Katie doesn't even have bangs anymore because I had to cut that shit out. I mean, it's not funny, really.
Well.
And we're recording this. It's about 9 or 9:30 in the morning. We were up till 12:30 in the morning trying to get that out of her hair. Like I said, I was trying to cut the teeth of the comb. And I was trying to snap it in half. I gotta tell you, long story short, we both gave up at some point. She doesn't look in the mirror yet this morning, but oh God, thank God it's like we have some time before we go back to see our friends. I'll tell you what. I mean, we're talking, it could be like a year.
Wow.
Anyway, so this podcast today is dedicated to my silly little girl, Katie Clark, who you guys might not recognize. It's Chinese here. Oh man. Well, that takes what are you up to, Joe? I got to catch my breath here.
How do you top that?
I can't.
God.
I can't. The only thing I've got to report to people is that after 3 weeks of isolation between us and Emily's parents, we deemed ourselves safe enough to see each other. So now we're in Enumclaw.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
That's good. That's good. Oh, man, that is good. Well, I guess I would say something about hair extensions, but instead we're going to talk about possible extensions with your 1031 exchange.
Whoa.
How about that?
Actually, maybe I could borrow some of your daughter's hair because I'm a little short on top.
Yeah. No joke, man. It's some beautiful long locks. It would definitely be enough to use for a comb.
We've lost her again.
Sorry, guys. I'm wide awake now. I'm wide awake. And you know what? We all are going to be wide awake right now because we have our friend Bill Exeter of Exeter 1031 Exchange Services on with us today, guys. And we are checking in to see what types of great extensions and that we can talk about, or any extensions that are available due to this health crisis we're in with the coronavirus, and how that impacts our real estate business in particular today, how it impacts the 1031 exchanges. You know, there's probably been thousands of investors who sold properties late in 2019 that, you know, or Bill, you can correct me what the story is, that might be under the gun to close on something, or in order to, avoid their capital gains tax, unless there's some deadlines. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Bill Exeter of Exeter.
Thank you.
Oh, woo.
Thanks for having me back there. And I tell you, I don't think I've ever started a podcast off where my cheeks now hurt from laughing so much.
Oh, man. You know, it's good stuff.
Good.
Funny but sad. You know, I'm laughing now, but once we're off this podcast and I have to go wake her up and say good morning, it might be another story here, but we'll keep it.
She may think it's a nightmare until she peeks in the mirror, and then it's going to be all holds off.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Oh, God.
So, Bill, what's going on with you? What's happening? Tell us. Let's just kick it straight off. First of all, I want to tell you guys that this is the second time we've had Bill on the podcast. What number are we on now, Joe? What is this number?
This is 115.
115. Well, Bill, we had on last time as podcast number 40. And you guys Joe's going to link it here in the show notes for you, but we did a deep dive on 1031 exchanges, like really deep dive. Awesome, great information that you guys should all school and educate yourselves on, since you probably have some downtime. Go back and listen to the story of how Bill got into the real estate business and the 1031 exchange business and all the details of that. We'll let you go listen to that one as well. But as a brief overview, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but a 1031 like-kind exchange allows real estate investors to sell one asset and identify a similarly valued property to buy with the proceeds. Typically within 45 days, you got to identify it and close it within 180 days. And if you do that, you can avoid paying capital gains taxes on that sale. Is that somewhat right? Correct me on that one.
Yeah, right on the money. You're awesome.
All right. Yeah. I have a cheat sheet here. So, let's talk about, what's going on, Bill. What's top of your mind these days? Let me just throw it to you that way. What is it that's going on with you and your business, and what are you thinking about these days?
Well, sure. Speaking of your daughter's extensions that she might need now, that's exactly what we've got in the 1031 exchange world.
Yeah.
And we've been waiting for them anxiously. That was a perfect lead-in, is the 45 days and the 180 days. And that's the biggest challenge when you're going through something like today, when you have a public health crisis and you're locked down, you can't leave your house. If you've sold your relinquished property and you're in your 45-day period where you have to identify replacement property, it's really difficult to do that if you can't leave the house without, risking catching the coronavirus. So a lot of investors started their exchange, and all of a sudden, bam, they're right in the middle of this thing. And it's like, well, what do we do? And we've spent the last, 2, maybe 3 weeks talking to a lot of clients who are panicking because they missed their 45-day identification deadline. They couldn't identify because they couldn't get out and look for property. And we were just counseling them, don't panic, don't pull your money out. There's probably going to be some type of extension that'll be granted, and hopefully that will help you through this process. And last Thursday, April 9th, in the evening, the U.S. Treasury came out with their guidance. And it's not not quite what we had hoped for. So I guess let me back up real quick. Historically, what Treasury and the IRS have done is the president would declare a natural disaster area. So usually it's fire, flood, tornado, what have you. And then Treasury would come out with guidelines that would grant extensions of time. And the way it's always worked in the past is the 45 days would be extended by an additional 120 days, or your 180th day would be extended for another 120 days. So gives you a lot more time to go out and find your property and close on it, what have you. Well, this time it's different. Usually with a natural disaster, you've got a specific geographic area and you've got a date-specific event. A tornado touches down and it's down for an hour and it causes havoc. In this case, we've got a virus. It's a public health crisis, and it's spanned months. So there's not a specific geographic area. It's the entire country, and it's not date specific. It just keeps on going. So what do you do? And that's what we're waiting for, is to see how Treasury would address this, because it's kind of a moving target. So the guidance they came out with is not what we had hoped for, but it's a good first step. And what they've come out with is, if your 45th day to identify replacement property lands between April 1st and July 15th, your deadline is extended to July 15th. So if you're closing, if your deadline ends, let's say on April 1st, you now have till July 15th to identify or close on your exchange. So that's great. If your deadline is July 10th, you effectively get a 5-day extension. Doesn't help a whole heck of a lot. So we're kind of in that weird spot where it's...
Wait, let's back that up again. So
sure.
Let's say that again. So if your deadline expired on, what'd you say? July 10th. I got you.
Yeah,
right.
if it's July 10th, then you've only got 5-day extension.
Right.
And normally, historically, you get July 10th plus 45 days plus 120 days or what have you, depending on your situation. And in this case, you get 5 days. So it's kind of frustrating. It's good and bad. It's good depending on your situation. It's frustrating if you're to the end. And of course, we have a lot of clients who called up and said, well, my 45th day landed on March 30th or 31st or what have you. And don't I qualify? It's like, no, you either on or after April 1st or on or before July 15th.
Right.
Now, so that kind of leaves a lot of people hanging. So a number of industry trade groups and some larger qualified intermediaries, including us, will be writing letters kind of outlining what this issue has really done to some investors, and hopes that we'll get a revision or something like that. I wouldn't hold my breath. Usually when they come out with the ruling, they don't revise it. Now, in this case, it's a little different. It's a national emergency as opposed to a disaster. And they might revise it. I wouldn't expect any kind of revision or update until closer to July 15th. But I wouldn't hold my breath. So I think we plan based on what we have today, but we hope for some other relief, especially for those folks that closed or had a deadline ending in March where they don't qualify.
Yeah. So who are the losers in this then? The people, who's most impacted by this then? The people that missed?
That's really, yeah, they just missed April 1st by their deadline date, like March 31st. They're just out. They're not completely out. They've got 45 days to identify, but they're coming really close to the end of that 45-day window,
right,
or the 180 days to actually finish it. So it really kind of depends. So if their 45th day deadline, so let's say landed March 31st, their 180th day is after July 15th anyway, so it doesn't really help them.
Right.
And then those who probably haven't sold yet, they're probably waiting, in the process of going through the closing process. When they close, the 45 days will land before July 15th, so it will be extended to July 15th, but it won't help their 180-day window.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's kind of a good news, bad news. Not necessarily bad news, but just doesn't help everybody.
What would be the goal if you could get an update? Would be that 120 days on both sides, or an add on there, or is that the,
Yeah, I think that, because really, if your deadline landed July 10th and you could add 120 days to that, that would be perfect. It would be ideal. So I think in a lot of cases when they were picking this deadline, they're picking the deadline to cover all sorts of tax deadlines. And that's the problem, is it doesn't, one size doesn't fit all. So ideally, if they would come back and say you get 120 days, that would be perfect. There are a lot of the attorneys who specialize in this world are debating that 120-day issue. Some are taking the position that you actually do qualify. The problem is the guidance they came out with didn't quote the proper section in the revenue ruling. So technically, it didn't trigger the 120 days. So I think probably the biggest focus for all those writing letters will be, you need to quote this section so we can get the 120-day extension. And we'll see what happens. If we get it, it's going to be at the last minute. So I guess if an investor falls into the situation where the deadlines don't help him, the extension doesn't help them, and their exchange technically looks like it's going to fail, I would not pull the funds out of the exchange. I would keep them in the exchange account, even though you may be losing interest or opportunities. Keep them in the exchange account in hopes that there'll be a revision of some type. If you pull the funds out, you trigger your gain whether you like it or not. And if they come out with an updated, revised guidance later, you can't put the money back in and say, I qualify.
Right. Another issue, related to all this is that, determining real estate values is getting tougher as well, right? Rents, people are, if they're paying rent or not, and the consensus with our local friends here in the Seattle area is that they fared quite well on the April collection of rent on both the A and the B properties. The C class properties struggled more, as some said, fell off a cliff, right? But, hard for investors these days to even figure out how to value properties right now, because of rent abatements and, considering if there's any retail mixed use components and stuff like that, how those things are all affected. Aside from the fact, now just for everybody listening, if somebody's doing a 1031, can they have additional debt when they're going to purchase the property, right? So they're selling something, they find their replacement property, they use their gains on the exchange, and then can they also get a loan to close at the same time?
Yes, absolutely. And so generally, let's say they sell a $500,000 property, they've got $300,000 in debt, $200,000 of equity. Generally, what would happen is they're going to acquire replacement property. And if they go straight across the board, which most people trade up, but if you go straight across the board, you'd buy replacement property for $500,000, you'd reinvest your equity of $200,000, and then you get a new loan for $300,000.
Right.
But most people trade up. So let's say they buy for $600,000 or $700,000. All you have to do is reinvest your equity of $200,000, and the difference could be a new loan. So you could certainly get financing for like $500,000 in that case to buy a $700,000 property.
Right. So this is being my point now. Lending is the landscape of lending, especially in like commercial real estate lending and multifamily is residential lending is still happening, but other types of lending are starting to constrict. And
right.
So now those people who are wanting to trade up or, need to get a loan as part of their exchange might screw up their closing timelines dealing with the lenders.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely good point, because that is a big issue today. We've actually seen lenders pull out at the last minute. I've actually had a couple clients where the lender funded and then pulled the funds back out of closing, which is really shocking. It's like, to me, that sounds like litigation, because you really hurt the investor quite a bit to go that far and then pull the funds back.
And those people then they ended up not doing their exchange, or what?
Yeah, it depends. One of the guys that I talked to, that was the only property he had identified because he thought it was a slam dunk. And but how can you predict a coronavirus? So in his case, that was the only property he identified. The lender pulled out. Now he still has a little time left on his 180 days. So if he can get another lender and get it put back together, then he'll be okay. And if he can't, then it's a failed exchange and it becomes taxable. So that's unfortunate. We've certainly seen issues on the borrower/buyer side where the financing is causing issues, delays, cancellations. So we've seen that. We've seen lenders who are repricing. So rates came crashing down to their lowest levels in forever, basically. And then some of the lenders, multifamily lenders I've talked to, they said they can't handle the demand, so they raised rates to slow the pipeline down. I think there's more that fall into the other bucket, which is they're concerned about risk. So they're raising rates to compensate for risk that they're looking at.
Well, that brings me to my next little question that's probably a very complicated question, but how about seller financing as a short-term solution even, or a long-term solution? How does seller financing in 1031s work? So let's say I found a replacement property and I'm having trouble with my lender, but the seller of my replacement property is willing to seller finance. Is that something is that a good solution there or potential?
Yeah, absolutely. That would absolutely work. Seller financing for 1031 exchange purposes is treated just like any other debt. So whether it's traditional bank financing or if you're doing hard money or private money or if you do seller carryback, it's all considered the same type of debt for 1031 exchange purposes. So I think you're absolutely right, and we're going to see more seller carrybacks to get some of these deals done. We haven't seen, so far we haven't seen a lot of change in the value of properties. I think, most people realize this is just a temporary deal. And once we get past the virus and everybody starts to get back to work, we'll recover fairly quickly. Most of the economists we've talked to, they think it's a V-shaped recovery. There's a few that disagree with that, but so it'll be interesting to see how fast the recovery occurs. But I think this is going to be relatively short duration. We'll just have to see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know. I change my mind every day, right? I feel like, I think it was on the news. I think I heard on the news yesterday that somewhere in China, maybe in the north part of China, they're having a resurge of the virus, and I don't know, guys, I'm not the news here. So I don't know. I change my mind every day. I think about the testing, right? And how does everybody move forward? Whether they let us or not is one thing, whether people actually, take it upon themselves, what they're comfortable with is maybe another. But, I was thinking about that today because when it comes to people's largest, huge financial assets, I feel like they're just going to do what they need to do to transact business because they just need to stay, afloat and keep their cash flow and their livelihoods happening. But how about with seller? Let's say I was wanting to do a 1031 exchange and I'm going to sell my apartment building or whatever the property is. And I, as that seller, offer seller financing. How does that impact on a 1031? Can I do that? I think
Good question.
Like school up on that, about does that note represents equity, or let's talk about that, unless it's super complicated.
Yeah. No, I mean, it gets complicated, but we can talk about it in general terms. That's actually the issue. What you just brought up is it considered equity? And the answer is yes. Effectively, you're selling the property. And normally when you sell the property, you close on the sale, you get cash. And the cash is either coming from the buyer or coming from the buyer's lender. In this case, if you do a seller carryback, you're getting some cash, but then you're getting a promissory note. And that is proceeds. It's sale proceeds. It's not in the form of cash, but it is sale proceeds. And so your sale has closed. You've gotten proceeds. And now the question is, what do you do with it? So it's possible. It just gets a lot more complicated because you typically what happens is when the sale closes, the note, the promissory note, a seller carryback note, is drafted in our name as the qualified intermediary. And that way, inside of the exchange account, we're now holding your cash and we're holding your seller carryback note.
So
but that's the easy part.
Still, right? You don't take possession
of
the
exactly.
note. How does that
No, they just draft it in our name. So technically, we're the owner of the note. And then the next issue is, now that we're holding cash and we own the note in the exchange account on behalf of the seller, how do you go buy replacement property when your proceeds are some cash and a big chunk is in the form of a seller carryback note?
Let me back
somehow
it up.
You have to use that.
Let me back it up. So you're saying that the note that let's say I'm the seller, right? And I'm going to sell and I'm going to offer seller financing and I want to do an exchange. I'm going to, collect some cash that you get into your exchange facilitator there. I'm never going to touch it. But the note is actually drafted in the name of Exeter 1031 or?
Exactly. Absolutely. And then moving forward, that's the easy part. But, drafting the note in our name is easy. The tough part is then what do you do with the note? Because you have to go buy replacement property, but you don't have all cash. So that's where it gets challenging. So there's really three options. The seller investor can effectively, quote unquote, buy the note out of their own exchange account. That's technically not what they're doing, but that's the easiest way to explain it. So if it's a $300,000 seller carryback note, they would put $300,000 of out-of-pocket cash into the exchange account, effectively put the money in. And then later, after the exchange is done, we assign the note back to the seller or taxpayer, so they get the note. And by doing that, they're really, it's kind of technically it's boot paid in and then boot received, and it nets to zero. They put in 300, they get a note later, and it's 300. It balances out to zero. There's no tax consequence. But a lot of sellers don't have that kind of money laying around, so that's one issue.
Let me ask you a question. Would there be an opportunity for some type of short-term, they could borrow that money, like from some type of lender, to get that money, that $300,000 to put in there? But I guess that lender would be, maybe that would be something that's like cross-collateralized. Maybe they offer that lender. I'm thinking of just like all our lenders that we work with, like hard money lenders or lenders that work with us at the auctions and stuff like that. And maybe there's a way to, obviously that lender needs to have security, and I don't know, I don't know how they do that, on the particular property that's being sold. So maybe it would have to be security off of another property or something.
Yeah, that's what we've seen. Is they could certainly cross collateralize. That would not be an issue. The buyer probably wouldn't want that. We've seen a lot of people who will, take money out on a mortgage or deed of trust on another property they own. We've seen clients who have gone to their broker and said, look, I need to borrow from my securities account. So you can do a margin account. That's an option too. It's not technically secured by the property. It's secured by the securities in the securities account. But if, in a volatile market like today, you have to be careful with that, because if the stock market goes down further, it could trigger a margin call, and that creates all sorts of other issues. So be careful with any kind of margin loan on your securities account. But any other borrowing or any other source of cash could certainly be used to fund the seller carryback. And then the 1031 exchange would have all cash, and that would be a relatively easy transaction to go through.
Well, I mean, what would be the point then, I guess? Is there a point to this of even doing it?
Yeah, it really, it kind of falls in that creative area where you've got a deal, you want to get it done, the buyer's having trouble, the lender's probably going to back out or something like that, and you really want to get it done. So in that case, if you're getting the right price and the whole deal makes sense, then absolutely, I think you can go through this and get the deal done. If the deal doesn't make sense with the seller carryback note, just back out. Don't do something just because you started down that path. If it doesn't make sense, just back out if you legally can do so.
What about selling the note to a third party?
You could absolutely sell the note. In fact, you could sell it to a related party and they might pay par for it. It's always great to abuse the family,
Yeah.
Or you could sell it to a third party. Third party investors, as you know, would probably want a pretty steep discount. But if your tax liability is huge, then selling the note at a discount, even a steep discount, might make sense. You have to crunch the numbers and see how it works out. Well, if you
sell it at a discount, then you just have to gap that discount with the cash, right? Yes,
or the discount is probably going to change the cost basis in the property. So you probably wouldn't have to come out of pocket for the cash to make up the difference. You could, and then it wouldn't adjust the cost basis, but it wouldn't trigger a taxable gain. I think it would just adjust the cost basis. So there's a couple of ways of handling that one. The third option, if you've got investors who have tons of real estate contacts, is to say, look, I need to buy replacement property. I need a seller who's willing to take my 20 or 30% cash down that I've got, and then take an assignment of the promissory note as the rest of my consideration.
Right.
And that would work. That would certainly work. So that's your third option.
Right.
And that one, if you get the right connections, it might work out really well.
Hey guys, it's Julie here with a quick break from the show to discuss an opportunity some of you may have interest in, which is to work more closely with me. On almost a daily basis, I get calls from investors and brokers, both new and experienced, asking me for guidance or advice. I love helping you guys out, and it keeps me on my toes too. So with that said, I wanted to let you know that I have a private broker coaching community called the VIP Education Community. And the best part is that it's 100% free. That's right, it's free to join. So whether you're a traditional broker or a broker investor, my VIP education community offers personalized one-on-one coaching from not just me, but also from my experienced broker friends with expertise in all disciplines of real estate and real estate investing. We'll teach and share our modern marketing strategies, our tech and lead generation resources, plus teach you how to identify or offer up opportunities for yourself or for your clients using techniques such as seller financing, lease options, land entitlement deals, BRRRR investing, flipping, multifamily or commercial coaching, whatever you like. We've got it all covered for you. The future of real estate is changing fast, and to stay in the game, it's time to learn about all the options you can offer your buyer and seller clients, as well as, if you want, learn how to use those skills to grow your own real estate portfolio. If you'd like more details about joining my VIP education community, reach out to me at julie@seattleinvestorsclub.com or text me at 206-910-2985 or just send me a Facebook message. My new favorite phrase is community equals confidence. So let's navigate the future of real estate together. Now, back to the show.
So we're talking about, let's go back it up. I'm the seller. I sell my property, seller finance it with a note, right? I get my note into the exchange facilitator. And then when I go to buy my replacement property, I'm providing the cash as the down payment and assigning the note as the difference to the new.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So the seller of replacement property would actually receive cash plus an assignment of the promissory note. And if, it takes a person who's really good at real estate and gets it. If you got a novice, they probably shouldn't be doing that because they're not going to understand what it is. It's really a third-party note. But if you get somebody who understands it, it can be really good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to be that person. I have a lot of my friends. This is all they do. And I'm loving the seller finance solution these days with all the uncertainty, right? Just to keep cooking along. And frankly,
absolutely,
I've had a lot of landlords calling me that want to sell their properties lately, mainly a lot of financial advisors out there telling them like, hey, get some dry powder and let's go in the stock market. I can't even believe it. That's like a common theme I'm hearing, right? And what I'm doing is talking them, kind of giving them the scenario of wait, hold on. Let's take a minute. If cash flow or cash of what you're after, maybe seller financing your property and taking a note back might actually be a higher return and more stable return that you get than the stock market, right? Unless you're taking all your proceeds. I mean, how many people are going to take 100% of their proceeds and throw it into the stock market, right? Probably not.
probably going to sit on some of it. So that means your return's going to go down. But anyways, wow, that's super interesting. You don't happen to have a, do people actually do this, or is it like 1% of people do that type of thing? Or is it actually a thing that happens with the seller financing, what we just talked about?
You get certain groups that specialize in it. So nationally, there's the National Council of Exchangers. You've got the Society of Exchange Counselors, and they have all sorts of regional marketing groups. And many times they're called exchangers. They're really equity exchangers. And if they could do a 1031 exchange on top of it and defer the tax, they will. And that's their specialty, is dealing with creative solutions, especially in tough markets like that. So there is a niche out there that certainly specializes in it. It's not a huge niche, but especially if a client gets into this situation, has to do a seller carryback and doesn't know what to do with it, then you just hook them up with the creative folks in the area and just say, we need to sit down and solve this problem. What can we do with it? And there's always a solution if you just sit down and take enough time to look at it.
Right. What did you say that was? The National Society of Exchangers?
Yeah, National Society, or there's SEC, which is Society of Exchange Counselors, and there's the NCE, which is National Council of Exchangers. And the NCE has regional groups all over the country. So they're like local chapters, like Orange County is the Orange Coast Exchangers, which is kind of I don't know if the technical term is chapter, but they're a member of the National Council of Exchangers.
Interesting. I'm going to check into that. So what else is going on? What's the consensus of like your clients right now? Are they, is there any, in a sort of a weird sort of way, if there's uncertainty in the market and the value of property drops, then it could perceive like drop and be an issue where you don't now have the value of the property to exchange into, right? Does that make any sense?
True, absolutely. So far, we really haven't seen values dropping. I think sellers are just kind of going, this is a temporary thing. We're going to hunker down and wait. So I don't know if we're going to see any, deep discounts on properties. It could. It really depends on how long we have to stay locked down and how much this affects the economy.
How about
March
that go into the DSTs that when they don't have any other options?
Yeah, the Delaware Statutory Trust would certainly be an option, and especially in this market, they're available. They're out there. In fact, all the DST brokers have been calling us saying, we're here. If client needs a last minute help, put them in touch with us. So that would certainly be a backup strategy, or even a primary strategy. I mean, there's certainly folks that are just going, I'm done with real estate. I'm tired of all the tenants and the management issues, et cetera. And so they're ready for something like the Delaware Statutory Trust. But in a market like today, it might expand that market into people who go, I don't have an option. I'm in the middle of an exchange. I've got to identify and buy something. So that could be a backup strategy if they're up against their deadline.
Do you work with a group that you like on the DST stuff? Do you have like who's give me a name of somebody that I'd like to maybe get somebody like that on the podcast just to understand more about what they do and explain it to people.
Sure. Yeah, I can shoot you some contacts. So we have contacts in every geographic area. I can teach you a contact that you can use for that. That'd be actually a great podcast. I agree with that, because especially what we're going through today.
I'm going to jump on that.
And the surprising thing is, when the whole public health crisis hit, we expected an immediate hit in our March numbers, and our March numbers were actually 15% above February, and even about 20% over the prior March. I was really surprised with that. So it didn't hit immediately. Now, our April numbers are down. I think everybody I've talked to, they're down, but they're not down like I thought they'd be. I mean, I really kind of expected it just to shut down for a while. And so they are off probably numbers, 35.
What do you mean when you say our numbers? Like you mean your business activity for 1031 business?
Exactly. So the number of transactions that we do per month. Mm-hmm. And so I just don't see this as a major hit and a prolonged deal, because people are still doing deals and we're still talking to people all day long. We're still pretty busy. A lot of the phone calls are, how do I deal with this situation? What do the extensions mean? But people are still trying to get deals done. So when I hear people talk about this could be a depression like 20s, or this could be like 2008. I don't see that. There's just too much pent up activity out there, and I think they're just waiting until it's safe to go out and do business. I just don't see a long-term major deal here.
Well, I also think the market is still, or has been strong. I don't know. It's probably changing daily, especially with the underwriting. I think it depends on probably the class of building, right? On multifamily side and probably commercial too, in the mix of building. I mean, it depends on what type of commercial building you have, what type of tenants. I mean, you got a medical building or something, you're probably looking good, right? You have a retail strip center, maybe not so great. You have a mixed use building I heard that on the multifamily side that the underwriters on the banks right now, if you have retail in your multifamily building, and they're not giving a lot of credit for that income on the retail side. And so I think that maybe, to me, it would seem like people were, what I'm hearing out there is people are thinking about cashing out because they think maybe they want some dry powder there to go take advantage while the market is still operating and selling well. Like we said, we haven't seen like this huge drop yet, where they think maybe it will, and they're going to be sitting there ready to pounce with some dry powder, ready to go trade up, right? Or do something like that. But trying to do that through 1031 seems you gotta, in the last few years, it seems like you have to have your deal lined up almost before you do the 1031, because it's hard to find the replacement property,
Very true. Absolutely. In fact, a lot of their conversations have been around that. And I go, look, just go out and try to find your new replacement property first. And if you find the property you like, there's all sorts of ways to potentially tie it up. So maybe you rent it from them for a period of time with an option to buy. Maybe you enter into a lease with an option to buy. Maybe you just buy an option. Maybe you go under contract with a 120-day closing or so. There's just all sorts of ways to tie it up to give you time to sell your current property. And now, obviously, not all sellers will agree to that, but the seller willing to agree to it, it'll work.
That's a great podcast topic too. How do you, I don't use tie up as a word in our world because of wholesaling that we probably usually try to avoid because it can have bad connotations at least for house flippers that or wholesalers that do that. But yeah, how do you get control with an option or something? That's a great podcast topic, right? To help
Absolutely,
everybody. Yeah. Man, Bill, you're helping us out here today. We're going to put you on the nuts and bolts of real estate investing staff here as our business development thought leader guy. Good stuff.
Well, we try.
Yeah. So where are you at today? Are you in California or where are you at?
We're in California. Yeah, we're hunkered down. We live in La Mesa, so we're hunkered down in La Mesa. We actually, drafted our business continuity and disaster recovery plan back in 2005 when we launched the company, and we've updated over the years. So we just pulled that out. We executed. Everybody's working from home. We're fully operational, and
Great.
We didn't have one glitch with our plan, so it went really well.
Well, I also am lucky enough because I'm at a cloud-based brokerage firm, which is eXp Realty, and we are 100%. Cloud-based, all our tech, accounting, all our education, everything. So it's been, aside from the hiccup in actual real estate business transactions, our company as a whole has not, had any type of hiccup in regards to transactions. If anybody's doing any, because we're cloud-based, it's been nice. So. No complaints there, but yeah. Well, is any other thing that we should talk about today? Otherwise we'll cut you loose and we'll reach out to you if there's any more updates. Like I said, everybody go listen to podcast number 40, which is the deep dive on 1031 exchanges. I think most of you know what that is and how important it can be to helping you with your tax planning and stuff as you roll through your investing career. But anything else we want to talk about today, Bill, or that you want to add?
I think that's kind of a good update on where we're at and the trends and everything. If anybody has any questions or confusion over the extensions, they're more than welcome to reach out to me. Be happy to chat with them. And we'll keep everyone updated also if there's any other revisions or updates to the extensions.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if the lending side, aside from the fact that people can't really travel around and go visit and tour these properties that they need to buy, right? That's another issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious to see what happens with the lending, how lending impacts the timing of 1031s. Even with these extensions in place. And I think I'll check back in with you here in another, 2 or 3 months and see if there's been any change in how you're seeing transactions get done. It'd be a really awesome case study to hear some of the creative ways people are moving forward. I think would be a fun topic to cover.
Sure, absolutely.
Sound good?
And I don't know if it's going to hit bottom or anything, but just to throw a concept out there, if you as an investor own a property and for some reason the value does take a huge hit to where it's worth less than what you owe on the property, still talk to your accountant, because depending on when you bought it and maybe some refinances along the way, even though you have no equity at that point, you may have a taxable gain. And it's still possible to do a 1031 exchange if you have no equity to deal with that taxable gain issue. So I don't think it's going to get like 2008. So we probably won't see much of that. But, there may be some properties out there that drop a little bit.
Depreciation recapture issues?
Depreciation recapture, or for example, maybe somebody bought a property years ago for $100,000, and then every year it goes up in value. Every year they refinance and pull the equity out. Maybe it goes up to $1 million in value, and then a recession hits, and maybe the value drops from $1 million to $600,000. They bought it at $100,000. So even though they refinanced every year and now they have no equity because of all the refinance activity, their cost basis was still $100,000. And even if the market value dropped to $600,000, they still have a $500,000 taxable capital gain because they've been pulling all their equity out all over the years and have not paid tax on it. And then you also have what you mentioned, the depreciation recapture. So a lot of folks will go, oh, I don't have any tax to worry about because I have no equity. Well, that's not necessarily true. So, recessions are where you see that happen. And unfortunately, investors assume if there's no equity, there's no, tax to worry about. And that's not the case.
Why would even somebody want to sell in that particular situation? I guess people have reasons they need to do stuff, all the time, but, Yeah,
in a lot of cases, they're forced. It's either a fire sale, short sale, deed in lieu, foreclosure, something like that. And they just walk away from whatever it is thinking, I have no tax to worry about because I have no equity. Well, and whatever the reason, there could be a gain.
Where I see that becoming an issue is if the values drop like that, and if you're an investor and you had put a loan in place, and, a lot of investors on, let's say, commercial side or multifamily side are putting on maybe like a 10-year loan or something. If you have a loan maturing in the next 12 months, and your rents are down, or, you have some sort of mixed use building and the retail is being impacted, and now you have to get an appraisal to refinance. And now those, values are, there could be a situation there where you're going to lose and have to write a check in order to refinance to, because your loan is maturing, right? It's those loan maturing.
Absolutely. Yep.
Those are the ones.
That's a perfect example. Yep. And we saw a lot of that in 2008. That was a huge issue because lenders just shut down and would not even consider it. So that's one thing that would trigger a forced sale of some type.
Yeah, I was part of a partnership and owned a 45,000 square foot retail center here in Washington when this went down in 2008-ish. And we had a refinance that came up and ended up having to basically write a check for $2 million because the values went down. We got caught in the refinance period during that time. So, for all you investors out there, you should be researching, if you can figure out, loan maturities at all. Those are where the opportunities are going to be. Those people are going to be the people that are going to, need to have some solutions. And I just want to say out there that, here at the Nuts and Bolts of Real Estate Investing and Seattle Investors Club for Joe and ourselves, we want to make sure we're continuing to tell everybody, don't be gross. This is not a time to take advantage of people. And,
if it's a time to help people with solutions. So there can be, as always, it should always be that way, a win-win for everybody. Some people are going to need help, and you need to be an information broker these days and help people. So please don't be gross, be kind. And, people are going to need help, and let's do it the right way. Right. And one of the ways we can help people is by introducing them to people like Bill here at Exeter 1031. They might need that help, and you're going to be of value to them if you're able to give them resources that might help them talk through some of their challenges. So please, let's all do that and move forward together. And that's all I got. Started with a laugh, ending with a cry. How about that?
So true.
Right on.
Oh my gosh. Well, ship your daughter's hair down. I could use some.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, I don't know if I want to do it to her or not, but I don't want to pile on the pain here for her, but it was, she'll get over it. Thank goodness she's a silly little girl. She'll probably find some funny way to deal with it, but good stuff all there, guys. So, well, Bill, thanks for coming on today. Now, how can everybody, what's the best way to reach out to you if they need help or first of all, I want to say, guys, that Bill's website has a tremendous amount of information on there. Just go to Exeter 1031, EXETER 1031.com. Lots and lots and lots of great information on there, as well as listening to podcast number 40 of the Nuts and Bolts of Real Estate Investing. And you are going to be learning for days while you're in your lockdown here. But other than that, what's the best way to reach you, Bill?
You can sort of get all the contact information off the website. Our phone number is 619-239-3091. Again, that's 619-239-3091. And that rings on everyone's phone wherever they're operating from home. So you'll always get a person and not a voicemail.
Let me ask you one last question. We are all hopeful, and I know that I'm sure our friends Tarl and Grace have a backup plan if needed, but as of this moment, the Pacific Northwest Big Badass Real Estate Expo is still, to the best of my knowledge, planned and scheduled for July 10th through the 12th here in Seattle. I know you've been there in past years. Were you planning to be up there this year, Bill?
We're planning on doing that again. It just kind of depends, I guess, on this whole environment and what happens.
Exactly. So you guys make sure that you are checking it out. This is going to be, if we're able to be there, we're all going to be there. It's going to be the place to be. I'll be there. Bill will be there. And we're talking about our friends Tarl and Grace Yarber, who are the hosts of the Pacific Northwest Big Badass Real Estate Expo, scheduled for July 10th through the 12th this summer. We hope to see you all there. What a great celebration it will be for us all to be together, and just loads and loads and loads of investors and breakout sessions and stuff like that. So look it up online. Tickets are on sale, and we hope to see you there. Other than that, I want to say, and Bill, this is something you can actually jump on with us when you have time. On Thursday mornings, Pacific time at 11:30 a.m. Every single Thursday morning right now, we are having our online meetup for Seattle Investors Club, but really it's for anybody. If you guys are listening from California or from Florida, where we know we have listeners from, thanks for listening. We appreciate that. Nobody's here in the room with me, but I just gave a big wave like I was talking about. Yeah. You guys, please join the conversation. We are having a awesome, fantastic, up to the minute check-in with all our friends, if you're a real estate, maybe you touch real estate, if you're an investor or a broker, or if you're a lender, or you're in a 1031 exchanger, or you're, anybody, we are jumping on a Zoom call and having a live conversation. Somebody has a baby. Joe, did you have a baby?
That is my 15-month-old daughter just walked in and went up, up, up.
Oh, congratulations. Well, be sure to teach her not to wrap a comb into her hair as she grows older.
Actually, it's funny when she walked in. I almost laughed. She walked in with a brush. I'm like, oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah. I've now scarred you guys. The brushes are bad too. Those round ones. Watch out, everybody. Watch out. Anyways, you guys, everybody, please join us. You can grab the link every Thursday morning. You can grab it right off our meetup.com site for Seattle Investors Club. This is not just a Seattle thing. This is for anybody that wants to join in. The topics that we're talking about are topics that apply nationally. And plus, we want to hear what's going on around the rest of the country anyways, from our friends and listeners out there. Please join us on the conversation. Again, go to our meetup page for SeattleInvestorsClub.com on Thursday mornings and grab that Zoom link. And Bill, that'd be awesome if you wanted to jump on from time to time when you have a chance.
Yeah, I'll put that down on the calendar. That'd be terrific.
Good stuff. All right, Joe, where else? How can people help us? We're trying to help all you guys and provide good content and information. But we do need to ask for something in exchange sometimes. What would that be, Joe?
Really, any kind of reviews where you're listening to this podcast, or shares, or even comments if you are listening to it from our website. Just interaction and shares and comments really would be fantastic.
Awesome. We love you guys, and we love hearing from you guys. If anybody has a topic they'd like for us to cover on this podcast, again, you can just hit me up at julie@seattleinvestorsclub.com or join our Facebook page. And when you will join our Facebook page, you're asked 3 simple questions, and that's an opportunity for you right there to drop in a topic that you'd like to hear about as well. So, all right, guys, that's it. Over and out until next week. And thanks again, Bill and Joe. Enjoy the show.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah. And I'll check in with you guys again and talk to you all soon. Other than that.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.
All right, Bill. Thank you. See you later, everybody.
You bet. Bye-bye.